Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Michael's Community Classroom. We're so excited to be here today. My name is Allie W. from Yarn Inspirations, and I will be helping Marley moderate today's class. We're so excited to be here for a great class just in time for I Love Yarn Day. So those of you who are beginners, which I'm assuming most of you are because we're here for Crochet 101, we're so excited that you're ready to celebrate I Love Yarn Day with us.
Very
Perfect. Cool. And so for any of you that it's your first time in a class, please feel free to ask any questions that you might have in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can.
Perfect. All right, you ready? Everybody ready? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Marley. Show of hands, because I see all of you in here, and I'm going to put you on gallery view on my screen so I can see how many of you have tried to crochet before. Quite a few hands. Oh, that's great. Fantastic. Awesome. Okay. So I do have a couple rules before I jump into teaching anybody how to crochet. And here's the rule number one. Okay. It's the most important rule. Everybody ready? Okay. You have to be willing to be patient with yourself. Okay. Unlike painting or drawing or anything like that, where you essentially, you've already established a way to hold a paintbrush or hold a pencil or do something along those lines. When we're learning to crochet, we are going to retrain our muscles to create some muscle memory and create neural pathways so that we can actually do what we're attempting to do. By doing this, especially as adults, we tend to get very frustrated with ourselves quickly, and we tend to lose patience with ourselves, and we forget what it's like to be a beginner again. So the first thing I want you guys to all promise me is that you're going to be patient with yourself and give yourself a lot of grace. Okay. Heads up. I'm not going to hopefully spoil anybody's parade here, but you're not going to be really great at this when you first start. All right. But we're going to practice, and eventually you will be great at this. Okay. And that comes to the second rule is after the class today, it's most important that you do practice. It doesn't mean you have to practice today, but if you practice tomorrow and a couple days after that, that would be ideal. Take some of the other classes that are available here on the Michael's Community Classroom. You can check me out on my YouTube channel. It's Marley Bird over on YouTube. I have a lot of beginner stuff there, but the most important thing here is that you're going to practice and continue to expand your skills. All right, guys. Okay, so I am going to approach this class very new, as if maybe you don't know very much about the yarn or the hook or anything like that. And we're going to go very simply, and we're going to learn about the yarn, about the hook, about the chain stitch, about single crochet. And then if I can get to it, we're going to talk about a double crochet. All right. So this is the plan. And here we go. All right. So in today's lesson, we're going to use a brand new yarn from Yarn Inspirations called Caron Big Donut. This is a brand new format yarn. It's our basic old yarn. It's a worsted weight yarn, but it's put in such a way it looks like this sort of horseshoe donut. And as you are pulling your yarn from it, it makes it so that it's tangle free. And if you just go with the flow, you go from one color to the next, and it works really well. So you can use any yarn you want to crochet with. I will be using this today. If you see this on the shelves at Michael's, all you do is obviously purchase it first. You're going to remove your packaging, and don't get rid of it right away, because it does have some wonderful instructions here on what you're supposed to do should you have any questions. And just so you know, this packaging should be recyclable. Check your local recycle facilities to make sure it works for you, but you should be able to recycle this when it's time. Set that aside, and here we go. We have a donut right here. And all of a sudden this is saying that, okay, when you get this, what you're going to notice is as you pull this apart, it has this plastic piece inside, sort of like what you would see on like price tags and stuff. You're going to snip that plastic and then fetch it and pull it out. So we're going to pull this plastic out completely. Okay, so you get rid of that plastic. Now you have this ogo and it's ready to go. You can see the yarn is right here. We're going to pull it from the outside. And as we pull it, it's just going to gradually come off of your donut and it's going to be perfect. Okay. Can you pull from the inside color? You can, but it is supposed to be pulled from the outside. That's the way it was designed. So I'm going to put this aside. If you're using any other yarn, follow the directions for that yarn, no problem. All right, so now we're going to call this our working yarn. And I am going to use this is what's called a size 9, 5.5 millimeter hook. Now you can use any hook size you want. I literally chose this size because the red against the blue will help you see the stitches. All right. Typically I would use a 5 millimeter hook with this yarn just because that's my preference, but I chose this hook because of the color. Honestly, that's where I am. Okay. When we're using crochet hooks, it's important to understand the anatomy of the crochet hook, okay? Because it's going to be important to create your stitches. You have your hook here. This flat part here, that's your thumb rest. Now, not all crochet hooks have a thumb rest, but this one happens to have a thumb rest. And what you're going to notice from this inclined portion right here of the hook to the thumb rest, there is a pretty, like a plain Jane, almost think of it as like a no man's zone. Nothing's happening right here. It is just the hook itself. That section right there, that is what determines the size of your stitch. So as you are creating your loops, you want to make sure your loops get up here to this section of your hook, so that way you can create the size stitch you want. This portion here is tapered to allow you to get into the stitches and give yourself some room in the stitches, right? Then you have your hook portion here. The Susan Bates hook have a nice little point to them. I really like that. But as we're working with our hook, we do want to make sure that our stitches get down here to this portion of our hook. Everybody with me so far? Okay. All right. We're going to start off with what's called a slip knot on our hook. And this is how I like to teach people how to do a slip knot. You take your working yarn, so you take the tail of it and place it into the palm of your hand. Take the working yarn and I wrap it around my forefinger and my middle finger and I come back up. So I've just wrapped it around. You guys see that? I wrapped it around. But now I'm going to cross over. Okay. You see I have that crossover right there. As I rotate my hand over, that makes it so that the loop I pulled up, right, or the string I pulled up is now over here, which is where I want it, because I'm going to go underneath this front loop, grab the back loop, and pull them off of my fingers. When I do that, that creates this big loop here. Here's the slip knot, and this is why it's called a slip knot. If I pull the legs apart, poof, it goes away. All right, so here we go again. I have the tail in the palm of my hand. I like to hold my tail so it doesn't go anywhere. Take my working yarn, wrap it around my forefinger and my middle finger, and come back up. Cross over, turn my hand over. I'm still holding my tail on the other side. Now I usually will grab this one on this side so that it's not going anywhere. So if I were to fold it over, you can see I've had that one pinched, I have that one held, and I have these two, I've crossed over there. You see that? You could even take your hook, go underneath the front, grab the back. I'm still holding my tails. I'm going to pull this off and let everything come off of those two fingers. See, I'm still holding my tails. If I keep pulling, that's where I get my slip knot. Now you're like, wait, that's too big. It's not going to fit on your hook. Well, remember, all you have to do is separate those two pieces and it tightens it up onto the hook. And that is a slip knot. Okay. Now, this slip knot is now a loop on your hook. And this is going to be one of the most important things I teach you in this entire class. This loop on your hook does not count as a stitch. Everybody repeat after me. I'm looking at you in the gallery. Okay. I'm reading your lips. This loop on my hook does not count as a stitch. Darcy, you didn't say anything. Come on. This loop on my hook does not count as a stitch. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm gonna call you out. That's right. Okay. So we are not going to count this as a stitch. So when a pattern tells you to chain a certain number of stitches, we're going to chain 11. You are not going to count that loop on your hook as one chain. You only count the chain after it is completed. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your yarn, and I'm not going to stress too long about how to hold your yarn here, because eventually, guys, you will find a way to hold your yarn that works best for you. But for me, I like to wrap it around my finger and hold my yarn. Like that's a preference for me. You hold your yarn however you need to create tension, okay? That's not the end all and be all. It's just that you need to create tension. Now, what I like to do is I will grasp my slip knot so it doesn't go anywhere, okay? And I have my hook here, and I am right-handed, okay? So for right-handed, we're going to take this hook and we're going to go over here towards the left side, and we're going to go underneath that yarn and come up the right side. You see how it looks like? We've literally just wrapped the yarn around our hook. Now our goal here is to take this wrap and we're going to pull it through that loop on our hook. And if I pull it through like this, if I pull it through where my hook is pointing over there, if I pull it through like that, you see how the hook part snags onto that loop on my hook, and it's like, what? That's going to be a problem, right? Well, here's the thing. This loop on my hook sort of looks like a teardrop. So if I go like this, can you see how it looks like a teardrop? So if when I wrap my yarn around my hook and I rotate my hook so that the hook portion is pointing down, look how easy that comes through that teardrop. What? Right? So we don't have to stress about it getting snagged. Let's do that again. I have my loop on my hook. I'm going to go from left underneath back to the right. And as I'm coming down this way, I'm going to rotate my hook and pull that yarn through the loop on my hook. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, that is a chain. And then you do it again. So what I like to do is I will usually, just as when I was grabbing my slip knot at the bottom, I was holding my slip knot in place, I will grab the chain. I'm right here around the yarn, come through, pull through the loop on my hook. Then I grab my chain and I do it again. Go around, come through, pull that through the loop on my hook. Now, those of you who have this, I want you to keep practicing this. Just keep doing this. For everybody else, I'm going to start back at the beginning, just so that way you guys can catch up. Let's start with the slip knot. Okay. Remember, we're all going to be patient with ourselves. You might not get this. You might not get this in this first hour, you guys, but if you keep practicing, it will click. I promise. Here's the tail of our yarn. We have the tail of our yarn. I'm holding it in my hand. I'm going to wrap my working yarn around my forefinger and middle finger. And when I come back up, I cross over. I rotate my hand. Now I'm going to grab that tail over there. So I have my tail and my working yarn. They're both essentially pinched just to hold them in place. Now, all I'm going to do is I want this string to go underneath this string. So I go underneath this one, I grab that one and pull it off and pull it out. All right. Keep pulling just like this. You have a loop. Put that loop directly onto your hook. Snug it up, not super tight, just enough. And now you're ready to work. So you're going to tuck this tail away. Here's your working yarn. And this is where we're going to begin to create chains. You have to create chains so you can start to work into stitches. Okay. The chains are what we start to work into. So you're going to hold your yarn, your working yarn, hold it in some way. You can hold it like this if you want to. You could do whatever works for you. I like to hold it to where I have tension around my pinky, and then it comes up over the top of my finger. And guys, that's how I've naturally started to hold my yarn over time. I was not taught that. And that's what's going to happen to you, is you're going to find a way that's comfortable for you. As we're doing these chains, it's easy when we are able to like stabilize this loop on our hook. And does the loop on our hook count as a stitch? Darcy, does it count? No, it does not count. All right. Good job, Faye. All right. So this does not count as a loop on our hook. So we grab our hook and we've got or it does not count as a stitch. So we're going to create a chain. So we have to take our hook. We're going to go underneath this loop or this string, our working yarn, going underneath it. We're going to grab it and we have to pull it through this loop on our hook. So by holding the bottom here, I'm able to stabilize it. By creating tension on my working yarn, I'm able to create tension on the hook. And I'm just going to pull that string through the loop on my hook. And now I have a chain. And then I repeat that. I'll grab the chain, go around the string, and pop out. Go around and pop out. Move my hand up as I go just to give myself some stabilization and keep going. Now, guys, I have taught crocheters before where literally this is all they practice on for like a week because it's just a matter of trying to create that tension, to hold the tension on the yarn, how you're going to hold your hook. And guys, I hold my hook like a pencil. You can hold it like a knife also. It's the same sort of thing. My grandmother taught me how to crochet and she held hers like a pencil. So I hold mine like a pencil, but I hold mine like a pencil. You go around and you just pop out. Now, as you're doing this, the biggest thing to think about is you do not want to go like this and then tighten that up. You see how tight that gets? You will never be able to get into those chains if you go like this and then tighten it up. All right. You must keep those chains, I'm going to say loose, but really you want to keep them the same size as your hook. Because notice every time I make my chain, I have my loop on my hook come down to this portion of my hook. So I come down and I put my loop there. That creates that size there. And it keeps everything very consistent. Okay. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret here. You guys ready? This is the hardest part of crocheting. Doing your chains so that they're the correct size. And then this next step, working into your chains, that is the hardest part of crochet. So once you can get past this, and it might be ugly, guys, it might be so ugly, but I want you to get past it so you can move on to the next part, because then things start to flow a little bit more and it will become easier. But this is the hardest part of crochet. All right, y'all? All right. I really don't care how many chains you guys have here. I mean, I'd hope that you don't have like 50 or something, but I want you to have enough chains here that we can start to work into them. Okay. So I have these chains. We've been holding our work like this to where we were creating our chains flowing up. What I want you to think of this is what we've created here. Let's say this was the bottom of a blanket. Okay. So we have created what will now become the bottom of the blanket. So now we have to work on top of these stitches going this way. And then we'll have to work on top of those stitches going back this way. And then on those stitches going back this way, very much like a typewriter. Okay. However, unlike a typewriter, when we're working on this, we're going to turn our work to be able to work back along the stitches, right? Like if we took this, right? If we wanted to work across this way, and then now we want to work back the other way, we'd have to turn our work and we work back the other way. Then we want to go back this way, we turn our work and go back the other way. Like you have to turn your work. So it's going to look like you're always on this side working, because your hook will be left down here. You'll turn your work. Now it's over here. You work across. Your hook is left down here. You turn your work, your hook is down here, you work across. So you're always going to turn your work, all right? So if we think of this chain that we just created as the bottom of our work, our hook is over here if you're on the right side, or if you're right-handed, your hook is over here if you're left-handed. What we're going to do is we're going to work into these chains and create what are called single crochets, all right? So typically what a pattern will do is it will say work a single crochet in the second chain from hook. We do not count this first loop on our hook as a stitch. This is not a chain. We do not count that. So if we're going to do a single crochet in the second chain from hook, we'd come right here. We see this V right here, right? That's our first chain. Here's our second chain. We're going to go into this chain and create a single crochet. Again, guys, this is the hardest part. Hang with it. This is something you're probably going to have to watch a couple times to get used to. I promise. You've got to have patience. As we go into this chain, there's a lot of different places we can put our hook, okay? We could go into this back loop right here. We could go into this front loop right here. We could go right down the center bit of this, like what looks like a V. And if we do that, it gives the illusion that you are putting a V on your hook when really it's that back loop and what I call the butt of the stitch. There's a lot of places, okay? So what I want you to know is as we go into this second chain from hook, I want you to just go into what looks like that back loop right there. Can you see that? Remember, we don't count the loop on our hook. This is the first chain from hook. This is the second chain from hook. I want you to take your hook and just grab that back string, that back loop. When I say grab it, all I mean by that is just put your hook into it. Okay? Just put your hook into it. Now, our hook is in there. What this resembles for us, guys, is this looks like a loop like we've had before. It looks like we have some sort of a loop or something on here. And then we're going to now take our yarn, wrap it around our hook, and pull it through this loop here. This loop here, that's the one we just went into on our foundation chain, and that is the start of our fabric, okay? So just like when we did our chains, I'm going to go underneath the left, come out the right, grab that yarn, and pull it through just the loop that I went into on my chain. Just that. So now I pull it up, I have 2 loops on my hook. Awesome. Once you get these 2 loops on your hook, you're able to complete what's called a single crochet. And you do that just like this. You're going to yarn over, just like we've been doing all along. And this time, we're going to pull that through both of those loops on the hook. And ding, 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 we have a single crochet. Now, this is going to be very helpful to all of you who are beginners, okay? If you don't have one of these, go to your local Michaels store and get some stitch markers like this. Better if you have a paper clip or something like that, anything that you can use as what's called a stitch marker. That's what we want to do here. Can you see this V right here behind the loop on my hook? It's right there. I'm going to put my needle thing through it. You guys all see that? That V right there behind the loop on my hook, that is the top of the single crochet we just did. Okay, that's the top of the single crochet we just did. So what I want to do is, because I know that's the top of the single crochet we just completed, I also know that when I come back down, that'll be the last stitch of my next row. So to make it easy for me to find, I'm going to take my marker and put this marker into that V. All right, I'm just going to leave it there. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to keep putting single crochets down my row. All right, so just like before, here's what we're going to do. We go to the next chain over. So it's going to look like the next loop. My hook is here. I go in to that stitch. I'm going to go around my yarn, like underneath my yarn. So the yarn is called a yarn over. Pull it through that chain and up. I have 2 loops on my hook. Yarn over and pull through both loops. I'm going to do this again. Here's a chain right here. I'm going to go into the chain, yarn over my hook, pull out, yarn over, and pull through 2. Make sure that your loops are coming down here to this portion of your hook, so that way they are not too tight. Okay. You want to make sure everything has you can actually like move your hook through your loop on your hook, okay? So you go into the chain, yarn over, that's called a yarn over, and pull up a loop. So you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, draw through both loops on your hook. We're going to do this all the way down into each chain. Into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Go into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Remember, guys, you're doing something that your hands have never done before. And I get it that I make it look super easy, but I've been doing this for 25 years, right? I guarantee you, when you come to me after 25 years of crocheting, you are going to be just as fluid as I am. It's really going to take patience. It's going to take time for your hands and eyes and brain to all kind of work together. But if you just honestly watch this video on repeat, pause the video, try and work the stitches just like I am. I'm going very slow. If you find that your stitches or your loops or your chains are too tight, don't sit there and struggle with it. Rip it out, do your chains again to where they're a little bit looser, and just make it easier on yourself, I promise. All right. These are things you just have to be very patient with, and just say it to yourself like I do. You go into the chain, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Into the chain, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Into the chain, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Into the chain, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, draw through 2. Once we get through this row, guys, it's actually so much easier, because working into these chains is difficult because we don't have a whole lot of fabric to work into. When you get to the end, you'll see that there's 1 V down there. You go into that chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. When you get to the end of the row, hopefully it looks a little something like this. You'll notice that there are V's at the top of your stitches. There are V's at the tops of your stitches. Those V's are actually what we're going to work into when we turn our work and go back. And it's going to make it really easy to see where to put your hook. All right. John Klein, that's totally fine that yours looks nothing like this. I'll be honest, the first crochet thing I ever did not look like this either. But it will take time, guys. I promise it will take time. Everybody remember, you gave me a pinky swear that you would give patience to yourself. All right, when you get to the end of the row, we're going to do a chain. All right, so just like we did at the start, we yarn over our hook and pull through the loop on our hook. That's a chain. Okay. Remember what I said about this looking, this is like the bottom of our work, and now we have to work back this way. Well, we don't work backwards in crochet. So in order to work back on top of these stitches, we have to turn our work. Okay, so I'm going to put this on my table here so that you can hopefully easily visualize it. If I want to put the next row, the first stitch I'm going to put right there, I have to turn my work. All right, so here's my stitch marker. It's now over here on my left side. I'm going to turn my work, and so now I'll be able to work down along this row. Now, when we started on the chain row, we began with a single crochet in the second chain from hook. As we finished row 1, we have a loop on our hook, which does not count as a stitch. We did our chain 1, so we have a chain right there. And then we have our very first stitch that we can go into. So when we do our single crochets here, we're going to start with our single crochet right here into this very first stitch. So you are not going to put it into this chain. We're going to put it into this stitch. And as I pull this closer, if you look at the top of your work, if I'm looking at the top of my work, just like this, can you see how it looks like V's? That V right there, that is my chain that I did at the end of my row. This V right here, that's the top of my very first stitch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hook. I'm going to put it directly underneath that V, just like this. See how it looks like the V is on my hook? And I'm going to work a single crochet. So no longer am I just working into the back loop of a chain, right? I'm actually working into the top of a stitch. So I'm in the top of the stitch, yarn over my hook, pull that yarn over through the stitch, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, draw through 2. Once again, that V right there behind the loop on my hook, that's the top of that stitch. So I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to mark it. And this is going to help you keep your ends very nice and straight. Okay. Once you've put your single crochet in that first stitch, all of these V's right here, all these V's, we're going to put a single crochet into each of those. So if you can see, put your hook underneath that next V. See that? Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Go to the next V, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Go to the next V, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. We're creating the same stitch, although now it just makes it so much easier to go into because we have actual fabric that we can hold on to, and we're already just getting a little bit more comfortable with the single crochet. Maybe not a lot, but I mean, we're better off than we were when we started because your hands is at least trying to create that muscle memory. And you just kind of work through. Try and resist the urge to pull the stitches really tight. You don't want them to be pulled very tight. So that is a very good question, Sarah. The reason for going through both loops instead of just through the back one, when you're doing crochet patterns, unless a pattern tells you specifically to go through the back loop or the front loop, you're supposed to always go through both loops. And it creates a more flat surface versus one that is more rigid, okay? So going through both loops creates a flat surface. If you were to just go through the back loop, what that would do is it would leave the front loops exposed and you would get more of a rigid surface. As you crochet, make sure when you pull up these loops, they come down here to this portion of your hook. That portion of your hook determines the size of your actual stitch. If you just go willy-nilly like this, your stitches are always going to be the wrong size, okay? If you need to go up a hook size to make the stitches work, you can do that as well. Now, as beginners, you guys probably don't know this yet, but most beginners will get to the end of the row and they don't know where that last stitch is. And that's why I have you put that marker there. Because this marker, remember I told you that we were marking the top of that very first stitch we did? So by marking it, we know where that last V is that we need to go into. So I know for a fact that if I put my hook right there into that last V, I am to the end of my row and I don't have to wonder if I need to do one more or not, okay? So I've reached the end of my row. Once again, if I want to take my work and turn back, because I want to go back along this row, I will turn my work. Now my blue marker is down here, and I'm going to work back along these stitches. Okay. You can do your slip knot however whatever way works for you guys, honestly. The slip knot is a slip knot is a slip knot. Now, I turned my work before I did a chain one. You can do your chain one and then turn. It's totally up to you. It doesn't make a difference. So I've turned my work. I'm going to go ahead and do my chain one. And now I'm going to work back. So remember what I said, that chain one, you aren't going to work into that. We want to work into the first stitch here. So I'm going to go underneath the V, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. That V right there behind the loop on my hook is going to be my last stitch. So I will undo the one down there and move this one up so that it's on the new stitch. You see that? And now I'm ready to continue on down my row. So I go to the next V and I create my single crochet. Now, guys, there's lots of different stitches in crochet, but honestly, they're all created in a very similar way in which you get the 2 loops on your hook, or you'll actually have more loops on your hook sometimes, but for the most part, you yarn over and draw through 2 at a time to complete the stitch. So we've been learning what's called the single crochet, which is a nice short squatty stitch. It creates a pretty square stitch, like it's pretty even as far as the width and the height of it, okay? And but there are other stitches that are taller that can make things go a little bit faster. Yes, Jeannie or Jean, you just do that chain one because we're working single crochets. Just so you guys know, I have entire beginner crochet series on my YouTube channel. So if this is something you're like, okay, I might not be getting it yet, I can keep trying with this, but I'm looking to advance and go a little bit further, you can always check out the Marley Bird YouTube channel. I've got an entire series called By Crafty Bootcamp where I'm teaching beginner crochet. So you guys could absolutely take part of that if you would like. To the end, again, I'm using my marker as a tool to know that that's my last stitch. Yarn over, draw through both. I'm to my end, and here's where we are. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat. We have 20 minutes left, and I would like to show you guys how to do what's called a double crochet. So if you guys are cool with that, I'm going to show you how to do a double crochet. All right. So at the beginning here, we've been doing a chain one and turning, or a turning and a chain one. That chain one gave us the same height, gave us to where our work was going to be the same height as the height of our single crochets. When we turn and we want to do a taller stitch, we have to prepare our chains over here at the side for that stitch. So think of it as like a stair step. We have to adjust our work to make it so it's the same height. Rule of thumb for a double crochet is that you would chain 3 and turn. Now, whether that chain 3 counts as a stitch or not is determined by the pattern. We're not going to count it as a stitch. We're just going to do a chain 3. So I'm at the end of my row. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to chain 3 and then turn. So I'm going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. All right. So that chain 3 is going to signify the height of the stitches we're going to create. And then I turn my work. Okay. Everybody there? Okay. Because I'm not going to count my chain 3 as a stitch, I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to work into the top of the very first stitch of my row, which means I'm going to work down into the 4th V. So if you think of it as 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Because the first 3 were my chains. There's my 4th one. When you go to create a double crochet, because we want to have extra loops around our hook, you start off with a yarn over on your hook to begin with. So we're going to yarn over our hook to start before we do anything else. So it's going to look like we have 2 loops on our hook. Okay. I'm going to go into that V right there. Okay. I'm going from front to back into the V. I yarn over and pull up a loop just like I did before. Only now I have 3 loops on my hook. Remember what I said to you? All of these crochet stitches are just very similar to the last in that we're going to yarn over. We're just going to draw through 2, which is going to leave us with 2 loops. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through those 2. This is going to give us our double. You guys ready? So we yarn over and pull through 2. See how that leaves us with 2 loops on our hook? Then you yarn over and you pull through 2 again. So we get down to where we have 1 loop on our hook. And you have a nice tall double crochet. Let's do that again. Start off by yarning over your hook. I like to hold that yarn over and the loop together so that so it doesn't get like too out of shape. Once I hold it onto my hook here, then I go into my stitch, yarn over my hook and pull up a loop. So now I have my 3 loops on the hook. Now it's a matter of yarning over and drawing through 2 times. So I yarn over, draw through 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, and draw through 2 loops on my hook. Let's do it again. Yarn over my hook, go into that stitch, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, and draw through 2. Begin again, yarn over your hook, go into the stitch, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, draw through 2, yarn over your hook, draw through 2. You know what's really exciting, guys, is that I know that there are some of you in here that are really frustrated and it's like, I can't get it. And I understand that feeling, but now we're almost an hour into it as you guys are practicing, and some of you are starting to get it. Oh my gosh, guys, I forgot to move up my marker. That's okay. So this is how you're going to do it. If you forget to move up your marker, I'm going to show you how to do this. Find where your very first double crochet is. Remember out here, these are our chains, right? So we didn't count our chains as a stitch. This is our double crochet. And if you were to find your double crochet, come to the top and find where the V is. You see that? That's the top of your double crochet, and that's where you want to put your marker. I'm sorry. Normally you'd put your marker in just like what I was doing before. After you complete that first one, you'd put your marker in, but that's it. That's where your marker is going to go. Okay. All right. So I'm going to come back over here and I just keep on going. Yarn over my hook, insert into the stitch, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, pull through 2, yarn over my hook, pull through 2. Guys, here's the V. I'm going underneath it just like I did before. So essentially, if you were to look at it from the top down, it looks like my hook, it looks like the V is resting right on top of my hook, right? So I yarn over and I pull through it and up, gives me 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. Yes, Jackie, I do. Yarn over my hook, go into that next stitch, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. Now, Megan is saying that her chains are so tight down here that her work is starting to curl like this, right? That is perfectly normal. A lot of people accidentally do that. For your practice swatch here, I wouldn't stress too much about it. When you go back to start another swatch, I would just take the care to make sure that your chains are nice and straight and not too tight. So that way you can create a fabric that is all the same size. All right. And that purely comes with practice. There are some people also who like to use a larger hook as they do their chains, and then they go to a smaller hook for the rest of their body. That is a possibility for you to do, but that doesn't mean that you are doing anything incorrectly. It's just something that you get to tweak later on. But as long as you are getting a fabric that you can now practice on, that is the most important part, you guys. All right. And like I said, I hope you didn't forget that first row, that chain and the very first row is the hardest row in all of crochet. And I don't care how advanced you are, it is the most difficult row. And the good news is, as you become more and more advanced in crochet, you'll learn that there are different ways to begin a project. Like you could start with this, what we did was called a foundation chain. There are foundation stitches. There are what's called a magic loop or an adjustable loop. You could actually crochet around a chain. Like there's a lot of different ways to begin, but this is the one that most patterns will have you do, which is why it's important to teach you that. So that's a very good question, Sebastian. Sebastian says, when a pattern says to stitch into the top of the chain 3, I always have trouble finding it. Can you show what it looks like at the end of your row? I will show you at the end when I get back down here, because I have a chain 3 down there and I'll be able to show you. And I will explain to you why you would use it or wouldn't use it. All right, Sebastian? So hold tight for me here for a second. I got to the end here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. Now this time, you guys, as I turn, I'm going to count that chain 3 as a double crochet. And I'm pointing it out to you here because there are going to be patterns you go and start to follow that will tell you to do this. When a pattern tells you to treat that chain 3 as a double crochet, you are then going to place your very first stitch into that next stitch over. Because if you were to think of this chain 3, it's in essence is already worked into the top of that first stitch. Okay. So you would not work it into there. If you did that, then you would be increasing because you'd have that stitch and that one. And Sebastian, that's actually why that pattern would have to often tell you to crochet into the 3rd chain of your turning chain. And Sebastian, right here, if you are just doing it right now and you know that your next row, you're going to have to work into the 3rd chain of your turning chain, put your marker in there right now. After you do your chain 3, take your marker and put it into that 3rd chain. All right, just stick it into that 3rd chain. And that will let you know, hey, that's where I'm supposed to put my last stitch. Okay, so for everybody here, I've marked that 3rd chain because I'm going to count this as a double crochet. So if this were to be counted as a double crochet, that 3rd chain there would be counted as the top of that chain 3 turning chain, which also means that I am not going to put my first double crochet right here. I'm going to put it into the next one. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you why I am not a fan of counting turning chains as a stitch. Can you see how you get that big old hole right there? I mean, it's not terrible, but because the turning chain isn't actually worked into that stitch, it's just shifted over to the right a little bit. It makes it so it looks like you have a little bit of a hole, which I'm not a fan of. But Sebastian, that's how you can make sure that you know where that 3rd chain is all the time. I mean, or 2nd chain or 5th chain or whatever it is. If you are following a pattern and you know that you're supposed to be working into your turning chain, mark whatever chain that is that you know you're supposed to go into so that you can find it very easily. And I know that, I mean, there are some of my fans joke around with me and tell me that I'm always using stitch markers, but you know what, guys, it's a tool that is out there to help you make your crochet or knitting life easier. So why not use it? Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to keep going here. I'm still just creating my double crochets. I'm going to get all the way down to the end. And we are doing these double crochets, just so you guys know, there are taller stitches out there. There's what's called a treble crochet. There's a double treble crochet. There's a lot of different crochet stitches out there for sure. So Donna says the hardest part for me is having the correct first and last stitch to get an even edge. Donna, stitch markers will be your friend. Stitch markers will be your friend. If you mark that first and last stitch, you will have straight edges every time. And Donna, if you are a regular crocheter, I want you to check out my videos on stacked stitches, like a stacked double crochet, and you will have super straight edges. All right, so you saw that I marked that. That's where my last double crochet is. I'm going to take this out because I want to show you the difference here, guys. Down here, my chain 3 did not count as a stitch, but see how it kind of pokes out? Okay. If you're doing something where you're not going to create an edging, this might really bother you, which is why people will have you do a chain 3 to count as a double because it makes it look a little bit cleaner. Can you see that? Okay. Now there are other stitches you can do here also, but this is the difference here. You have to absolutely know whether your chain 3 or chain 2 or chain 4 counts as a stitch or not. Because if I had not marked this and I saw this out here, I might think to myself, well, that looks like a stitch. I should work into that. And that is when beginners get into trouble because all of a sudden your work is growing because you're increasing your stitches each time. So use your markers and trust your markers. So on this side, we did not count that as a stitch. That's why we put that double crochet right there. So I'm not going to work into that. This would be if I was at the end of my row, I would chain 3 or turn and chain 3. It doesn't really matter. Turn my work. Let's keep it down here to where that does not count as a stitch. So if that does not count as a stitch, that means I'm going to put a double crochet into that first stitch. So I will put my double into that. There's the loop on my hook. There is the V behind the loop on my hook. That's the top of my double. And I know that's going to be my last stitch. Yarn over. I do want to point out, guys, do you notice that we're doing yarn overs? We're not doing yarn unders. We're doing yarn over. You go over top of your hook and you go in, and then don't go like this, because this is a yarn under. You want to go over your hook. All right. It changes the way your stitches look, and you're supposed to create these with the yarn over. So it's over your hook. Don't get in the habit of taking your hook over top of your yarn. Okay. It's over your hook. Those of you who are knitters, it's opposite knitting. Knitting goes the opposite. And those of you who are knitters who are here just to kind of peek at crochet, you have to think of your crochet stitches. You're binding off each stitch as you go, whereas in knitting, you are keeping all of those stitches live. But with crochet, you are binding off everything as you go. All right, so I want to show you something, because what if you get to the end of a project and you want to add a new color or add a new ball of yarn, or maybe you have a knot in your yarn and you need to remove that and add your yarn. I'm just going to grab some yarn real quick. This is not the same yarn, but this will work. Let's pretend that this, for some reason, there was a knot and I had to rejoin my yarn. This is what I want you to do. You're going to yarn over, go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, drop the color you were using or the yarn you were using. So you do this if you're going to change colors too. Grab your new yarn, whether it's the same color or a different color, and you'll notice I'm just holding them both together, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops on my hook with my new yarn. So it could be just a new ball of the same yarn, whatever, it doesn't matter, and just continue on with that new yarn. Let the old one just go away, and you would continue on with your new. What would happen here, obviously you'd have some tails here. When all is said and done, you're going to take a yarn needle. These needles here, you guys, these are fantastic. It's called a bent tip tapestry needle or a chibi. They sell these at Michael's. Do yourself a favor and get the metal ones. They are fantastic. You would just take your yarn needle, thread your tail onto your yarn needle, and then weave in your ends so that it just disappears. But that's how you're going to change yarns. You just use your new yarn in place. Okay. Now we have 5 minutes left. Are there any questions that you saw Allie come through that maybe I tried not to, or I didn't get to that you think I should?
There are some questions about the first row, identifying where to go into the stitches on your very first row. So
like your chain row?
Yes, your chain rows. I think
Okay.
that would be helpful if we could cover that again.
All right, I'm going to change colors of hooks just so that way we can, since I'm just going to use this real quick. So I'm going to put my slip knot on. I'm going to give myself a couple chains so I can show you. So let me get some chains here. Okay. Everybody see that? So I have some V's here. Each of those V's represents a chain. Loop on my hook does not count ever, ever, ever. So if I'm looking at my chains, I'm looking at the side with the V's. If I look at the opposite side, it looks like pearl bumps. They look like a butt of a stitch. That's actually what I call it, is the butt of a stitch. So I'm looking at the V's and I'm going to count my V's. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chains. If I'm going to do a single crochet, I want to put a single crochet into the second chain from hook. If I were doing a double crochet, I would put it into the 4th chain from hook. If I were doing what's called a half double, I put it in the 3rd chain. So the pattern will tell you what chain from hook to go into. But ideally, for a single crochet, we're going to go into that 2nd chain. Now, to make it super easy for you guys, I am just taking my hook and I'm just going through, if I'm looking at that V, I'm going to put it through the back leg of that V just to make it easy. All right. So I'm into the stitch. That's just like when we went underneath both V's here. It's the same idea. You go into the chain. I like to hold my chain and like hold it in place like this. Yarn over my hook and then pull that through the chain. So I have 2 loops on my hook. Yarn over and then draw through 2. So it's at that point, that's where I put my marker. If all my markers are used right now, but then I go to the next chain. So I look here. Okay. So I see all my V's here. There's the next chain. I put my hook into it, yarn over, pull up a loop. Okay. Yarn over and pull through 2. And you just do this all the way down. Nancy, you are more than welcome. Like I said, I'm doing what's called By Crafty Bootcamp, where I'm actually teaching knitters how to crochet. So if you're interested, come and join me over on the Marley Bird YouTube channel, because there are so many great instructions, guys. And honestly, you guys, here on the Michaels Community Classroom, we do a lot of beginner classes. And just like I said at the start, you guys, you have to give yourself some patience and some grace and just practice these few skills that I taught you here, and then sign up for one of the other classes and take a stab at that. Because you guys, did you know there's no such thing as a crochet machine? There are knitting machines, but there is no such thing as a crochet machine. So anything you see out there on the mass market that is crocheted, that has been crocheted by human hands, somewhere in the world. And so there are old and young people all over the world crocheting. So it just literally takes some time, some patience. And once you're comfortable holding your yarn, holding your hook, and then being able to actually read what you're doing, it will make things so much easier. I promise you. I promise you. I promise you. I promise you. Okay, guys? Anything else I might have missed, Allie?
I think we've covered it. And just a reminder to everybody, this class will be posted on michaels.com and Michaels YouTube, so you can rewatch it to your leisure.
Awesome. All right. Can you go to my face just really quickly? Okay. So I have a lot of smiley faces in here still. And I have some people that are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, right? I totally get it. And I understand. I understand if your hands were shaking as you were holding the hook, if you just couldn't get some sort of a grasp on the yarn, I get it. But I promise you that with time and practice, that will come. One day you will pick up your hook and yarn, and without even thinking, you will just hold your yarn some way. And it will just be like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. I promise it will come. You might be frustrated with me. You might be frustrated with crochet all here at the start, but it will eventually come, because I truly believe in all of you. And if you really want to learn to crochet, or you really want to learn to knit, you can do it. I promise you, you can do it. I believe in you completely. If you want to share your work with me on social media, please use hashtag Marley Bird. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube. just look up Marley Bird. That's really my name, guys. And I will give you as much encouragement and inspiration as I possibly can, because honestly, I love to see that aha moment in your eyes when you're like, oh my gosh, I did it. And I just want to give you as much ammunition and power and confidence to be able to do that. So please do that. Okay, guys, promise me, pinky swear. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Allie, it's all you.
Well, definitely check back and sign up for more Michael's classes. You can find those online at michaels.com/classes. And you can also go there to check out the recordings as well. Perfect. Thank you everybody so much, and happy I Love Yarn Day. Bye.